So I'm continuing my reading, and what I'm doing in this series is that I am reading through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I'm reading in a chronological order of events, not according to publication or volume, so I will be skipping around a bit as I go. I am now starting the book of Exodus, having read through Genesis and all that first 2,000 years of the Earth's history, approximately. Now, before I get into this, I do want to show you this right here. The complete Joseph Smith translation of the Old Testament. Now, what the Joseph Smith translation is, it is an inspired correction or translation of the Bible done by Joseph Smith to restore portions of the Bible that had been lost over the years or changed. So, it's restoring the original text of the book of the Bible. Now, this is not the entire Bible. This is only a side-by-side comparison of each verse that was altered. So, most of these changes, I don't know about most, I would say 60%, a majority, are contained in the footnotes of every Bible published by the church. This book contains those portions that are not in the footnotes. And I had this in storage for a while, so I wasn't using it in reading through Genesis, so we may have missed a few things, but I will be using it from now on. So, in Exodus, there is one verse that Joseph Smith corrected in his translation. So, let us read in Exodus chapter 1. It is chapter 1, verse 1 that Joseph Smith makes a correction in. So, this is verse 1 in the King James Bible. Well, first of all, chapter heading. Got to start in the beginning. The second book of Moses, called Exodus, chapter 1. The children of Israel multiply. They are placed in bondage by Egyptians. Pharaoh seeks to destroy sons born to Hebrew women. Now these are the names of the children of Israel which came into Egypt. Every man and his household came with Jacob. Now first, footnote on C, came into Egypt. Came into Egypt with Jacob. There's a little Hebrew alternate Hebrew translation. But the Joseph Smith translation says here, instead of saying the last phrase there, every man and his household came with Jacob, the Joseph Smith translation changes that. Every man according to his household who came with Jacob. A minor change, but it does align better with what the rest of the Bible, the formatting of the Bible. So these are the men according to their families. We're going to list them by family, in other words. So the way it is in the Bible, the way it is in the King James Bible, is saying that every man came with his house into Egypt. With the Joseph Smith translation, it is saying we are now going to list all the men according to their families. And you'll note this here. Right here we have starting in verse 2. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. All the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls, for Joseph was in Egypt already, and Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all that generation. Okay. According to the families, according to the household. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. They're the sons of Leah. Benjamin, son of Rachel. Dan and Naphtali, son of Bilhah. Gad and Asher, sons of Zilpah. So they are, in fact, listed according to their families. Just as the Joseph Smith translation indicates. So anyways, just a little minor thing there. Nothing vitally important, but I thought that interesting. So now, on the final note, it says, Joseph died and all his brethren and all that generation. This is another indication that the 70 souls that came out of Jacob's loins, that's his personal family. But his household was a much larger household. They had several hundred people, and everybody who came of that generation, or of the same generation as Jacob's sons, are now dead. Verse 7. And the children of Israel were fruitful, and increased abundantly, and multiplied, and waxed exceedingly mighty. And the land was filled with them. And there arose up a new king over Egypt, who knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people, Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies, and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. So, here's the thing. Sorry. There arose a Pharaoh who knew not Joseph. Now, in Genesis, it states that the Pharaoh that made Joseph second in command, his son knew Joseph, and his son knew Joseph. So this is a third. But it says there arose a Pharaoh who knew not Joseph, and up a new king. Now, this is, as I've talked about before, the Hyksos people, the Hyksos dynasty, would have been from the time of Abraham, just before Abraham, to just after Joseph. They were Semitic who came in and took over Egypt. They were driven out when the original Egyptians, the Hamitic people descended from Ham, drove them out. There rose up a new king over Egypt. Is this referring to a new dynasty? Interesting wording there. It's not, I'm not saying that that's exactly what it means, but it could mean that it's talking about a new dynasty, not just a single king. And you'll note the reason they want to keep them there, the reason why they're going to enslave them is, first of all, they're worried if we go to war, the Israelites might turn against us, which it's a true concern, although I think it's an unfounded concern. I don't think the Israelites had any intention of turning against the Egyptians. But the thing is that it's not that they would try to conquer Egypt, but it's that they would try to leave Egypt. The strength of Israel has made Egypt prosperous. And the Egyptians saying, hey, we don't want to lose these guys. We want them here working for us. So, verse 11. Therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramesses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. And they were grieved because of the children of Israel. And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, in mortar and in brick, and in all manner of service in the field. All their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor. So when it says treasure cities, in the footnotes we have an alternate Hebrew translation of storage cities, meaning granaries, places to store the food, because remember, after Joseph, 1/5 of all the grain was given to Pharaoh as a kind of tax. In verse 14, bondage, with hard bondage, right? Bondage, the Hebrew word translated as bondage, also means labor. So this is hard physical labor. So there we go. But I think it's funny, the more there are too many of them. We got to oppress them. We got to make them slaves, keep them down. But the more they persecute them, the faster they multiply, the more children they have. God is blessing Israel. Okay. Not too much left in this chapter, so let us get through it without getting too long on the video. Verse 15. And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of the one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other Puah. And he said, When ye do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then ye shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. But the midwives feared God, and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men children alive. And the king of Egypt called for the midwives, and said unto them, Why have ye done this thing, and have saved the men children alive? And the midwives said unto Pharaoh, Because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are lively, and are delivered ere the midwives come in unto them. Therefore God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed very mighty. And it came to pass, because the midwives feared God, that he made them houses. And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, Every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter ye shall save alive. Okay, just a couple I think this is another just kind of funny story. Pharaoh saying, "Oh, these Israelites, there's too many of them. We got to cull the herd. We got to prevent more children. So he tells the midwives, kill the children." What they're talking about here is, when you see them upon the stools, this was the practice. When a woman was in labor, they weren't laying on the ground. They were laying in a bed or upright to a certain extent, so that gravity could help the child come out. That's what it means by on the stools. But I love the midwife's excuse to kids. Why aren't you killing the kids? And the midwife's like, we get there too late. By the time we're there, the kids are already born. And I just find that hilarious. I love their excuse. The Egyptians, they take too long. They take a long time to give birth. The Hebrew women, they go into labor. That child's born before we even get in there. They've got the child in their arms. We can't just rip the child out of their arms, kill them. And so then Pharaoh gives his order to take all the men, all the sons, and cast them into the river. He said, no, just go in, take them, throw them into the river. Now, he charged all the people. This wasn't just the military. This wasn't just the army. The Egyptians would go in, and it was every time a child was born. This wasn't a one-time thing. This wasn't that on this day we're going to go out, take all the male babies and toss them in the river. It was for a period of time. How long it was, well, we'll speculate on that in another chapter. But it was a period of time in which, when a child was born, if it was a male child, the Egyptians would go into the house, take it, and throw it into the river. So the last thing I want to note here is when it says, because they feared God, he made them houses. Now, he didn't build them a brick house. No, this is talking about descendants. These midwives had many children, many grandchildren, many great-grandchildren. Their families were increased because they feared God. And I'm going to leave that here, and I will see you in the next one.